Today on the Mr. Maple podcast, Tim and Matt talk to Scott Hubble, owner of MrMaples. They discuss bonsai, truncatums, and Scott's favorite maples for Texas.
Hey guys, I'm Tim, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show.
Hey guys, I'm Matt. We've got a great podcast for you here today. As always, like, subscribe, and share. If you haven't already, rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform. We air these podcasts on all your major podcast platforms. We also air the video components to these on YouTube on the Mr. Maple Show every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And guys, if you don't know about MrMaple.com, we're a family mail order business. We do Japanese maples. We do over 1,000 varieties of Japanese maples, and we ship them directly to your door. So make sure you shop on MrMaple.com. We're always adding new plants every single week. In fact, we have 10 new trees every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to our website and sign up for our weekly emails.
Guys, we've got some of my favorite maple people on the podcast today. We've got Scott Hubble, owner of MrMaples. Him and Keith, we need to get Keith on too, but Scott is just some of my favorite people to talk to. Love going to Maple Society meetings with this guy. He's just good people, and we wanted to kind of highlight him. We'll talk to him a little bit about truncatums, the challenges of growing Japanese maples in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Bonsai.
And also bonsai, yeah, and he's a bonsai expert. Scott has some amazing bonsai collections and his own private collection as well. We want to really get into all these different aspects with him here on the Mr. Maple Show today.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. We're excited you came on this morning to be on part of our podcast.
Absolutely. No, thank you guys for having me. It's kind of hard to tell the two of y'all apart for whatever reason on this phone call. But yeah, nice to hear from you and happy to be here for sure.
Awesome. So, Scott, you're the owner of MrMaples, and tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, so the nursery here in Fort Worth, MrMaples, was the brainchild of Keith Johansson, and I guess in the early '90s is when he had the idea to start a nursery in this part of the state. He and his wife had lived in Oklahoma for many years leading up to that time, and moved to Arlington here close by the nursery. The original plan that Keith had was to be a completely wholesale.
Okay.
And I think what happened was an article came out in the Fort Worth newspaper, and it highlighted the nursery, and from the beginning. At that article, it turned this place just about all retail, and it I'll let the cat out of the bag, and has been just a really neat destination for people in the North Texas area, and we have customers that are nice enough to drive from all over the southern United States to visit.
Man, y'all had such an imprint on that area. I mean, I know a lot of people are learning they can grow Japanese maples in Dallas, Fort Worth, and beyond that probably had no idea before what y'all are doing there.
And I know plenty of people too that drove down, like Brian Rule. He would drive down from Oklahoma to come visit y'all and get trees. And he works here. He works now at Mr. Maple, but I mean, he was always so excited. And I know Matt and I, when we drove down from North Carolina, we actually made a trip from Connecticut all the way down to,
I remember that,
all the way down to come visit. And I mean, we were such a great assortment of Japanese maples, and especially those shantungs.
No, that's very nice of y'all. Yeah, I remember so clearly when you guys came out that day. I think it was that white pickup with the cover on the back, and y'all were making the nationwide tour.
That's what we had to buy Dad a truck after that. We've owed him a truck for a while. That was my dad's truck after he retired, and I think I put well over 100,000 miles. We had that truck
That
Gosh,
one,
at Dennis Dodge's place, and then we went through downtown New York, and the next thing we knew, we were in Dallas.
Oh, that was really cool, and what y'all have done since that time, it's incredible.
Oh man, I appreciate
the following y'all have, the people that come out here and have found out about new varieties or learned from the information that y'all are putting out there. I think it's really, really cool. Putting a lot more maples in people's hands, people's gardens, and getting the interest up. And just like you said about Keith and starting this place, it wasn't all that growing Japanese maples in North Texas wasn't considered something that was necessarily doable. And I think originally, he bought the property and found somewhere in Oregon that sold him some grafts. Then he found, at that time, Duncan and Davies in New Zealand. And
Oh wow.
he would buy bare root material from New Zealand and then drive in his Saab up to the DFW airport with a trailer and pick up those boxes. And it would have been, coming from New Zealand, they would have been dormant in the middle of summer here. So he's carting them back to the farm and potting up these bare roots. It's really neat too, because a handful of those trees were planted out here and are still thriving. And to think they started out as something that flew 3/4 of the way across the world is pretty cool.
Keith's such a character, man. We'll have to have him on someday. He's in Italy now for our listeners. He's since retired, and Scott's now the head honcho out there, and it's a pretty cool deal that you could take that over and continue that legacy on. It's a mutual admiration society here with us for sure. That's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on.
So Scott, we've talked a little bit about how Metro Maples got started. How did you get into Japanese maples, and then how did you come about, working at Metro Maples, and then how did you come about owning Metro Maples?
So yeah, it it started, I guess, when I bought the house that I currently live in, and I'd always noticed maples, driving around, that sort of thing, and always had a real appreciation for them, but didn't know anything about them. And my house has got some large post oaks that protect a fair amount of the landscape. So I thought, well, yeah, I'll make a trip out to Metro Maples to see what they got. It's funny because I grew up with a good friend of mine actually dated Keith's daughter for many years. So I knew about this place since probably maybe late in junior high. And then I thought, well, yeah, I'll go out and bug Keith and see about a tree. I ended up coming out on a Saturday and wandering around. I left with a 3-gallon Trompenberg. And that just sort of, it kind of kicked it all off. The
cool.
obsession started. And from that point, I was back, every Saturday. And I'd pick up 2 or 3 1 and 2 gallons each time. And at a certain point, Keith started to recognize me. And up to that point, he had done all of it just completely on his own. And it was one Saturday, and it was hopping out here, real busy. He was loading this trailer down the back half of the place, and there were just people crawling all over. And he says, "Hubble, I'll give you a 1 gallon if you'll help me load this trailer." So I come running over. I'm running, and I think it was Aka Shigetatsu Sawa, that particular donated tree, and I helped him with that. And then he asked if I wanted a job, and I said absolutely. And it originally was he was planning just to have me on through that summer, and that turned into like 10 years.
Wow.
Keith, he and I, we always got along real well. We learn things in kind of the same way, of a watch how the expert does it, and then try to replicate that. So that style was easy for us to work together on, and had tons of laughs in the process. He's one of the funnier guys that I've been around.
I gotta agree there. We about got kicked out of a German restaurant before with that guy. He's the worst. Keith,
I remember that.
Keith gets you going somehow, and you just can't stop. Like the silliness ensues, and like he brings it out of you. Like you start to exude the same energy as Keith. You can't help it. It gets sillier and sillier until everybody in the place is literally in tears, and it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, that dinner that night and the poster, that was so much fun. There was a lady, can't remember her name. She was as sweet as they come, I think from New Jersey, and her laugh was just infectious. And she would start laughing, and then the whole table is erupting,
Keith with his deadpan delivery sometimes, and just continuing to beat a dead horse with the worst jokes at the German restaurant.
Yeah. And I'll still hear those, and that's one thing about Keith. He's not going to give up on a joke. If you've made the mistake of laughing at it one time, he's going to keep coming with it.
Well, I got to ask, did he wear the helmet around with you much when it was just the two of you, or is that just for show thing?
So he didn't wear it on any kind of consistent basis, but definitely, there would be certain times where that helmet would come out.
I think we're gonna have to go over to Italy and do a little interview with Keith. He's just a trip, man. He's one of my favorite people, and he made the Maple Society meetings a lot of fun for me. When we were getting into it.
So Keith really made, and Keith and you both started to make Truncatum the Acer Truncatum, the Shantung maple, and household name when it comes to maples in Texas. What does Acer Truncatum do for people in Texas?
Well, it's the larger growers and really the dwarfs too. They're capable of offering people a really nice, long-lived maple tree that can produce and show off really attractive fall color and can do so in the full-on Texas sun. So it's a really nice, depending on what variety, either a 25 to 35 foot kind of freestanding tree in the middle of a landscape, or a baby dragon could be tucked up close to the house, as kind of an ornamental plant, but just a way to get people interested in maples if they didn't have enough shade to grow Japanese maples. And it's so neat to look at these, a lot of the old trees that are on the property that Keith planted. I mean, some of the big fire dragons that would have been the first grafts. The original fire dragon is out here, and it just looks awesome. Seeing how they mature, what they show off. This past year in the fall we had a difficult summer, and I think that contributed pretty significantly to the fall color. And once we got right around Thanksgiving, this place was it was like a dream world. And seeing people come out and just be completely mesmerized. The color was so good that a couple of times I was up potting rootstock for this year's grafting, and you could hear traffic slow.
Wow.
It was awfully cool. There's a big seedling grown Shantung right by the entrance that Keith, he just would always refer to it as gate dragon. And and that tree is probably 35 feet tall and close to that width. And it was the most beautiful yellow. Really, really neat. So yeah, the Shantungs are an awesome plant for a sunny spot, something that will grow vigorously, and the kind of the cherry on top is their fall color, from the bright red orange of fire dragon to the real pretty yellow and gold of baby dragon. They're great plants.
How many selections are y'all up to? Do you know now at Metro? How many have y'all made?
Boy, I'd say easily 30, 35.
Wow, I'm gonna have to collect some more. I'm missing a few.
And yeah, one of the things that was pretty cool when Keith moved, after he had gotten all of his stuff that he was going to take from his house here in Texas over to Italy, the last thing to get moved out were all of his potted plants and whatnot. So I rented a U-Haul. I think I made three separate trips to and from his house, and included in the trees that I had in those trips were 4 or 5 unnamed cultivars that he had found. And this will be the first year that I attempt to graft any of them, but have a real compact and dense growth habit with a lot of the characteristics of baby dragon, but looks like the actual form of the trees will be unique compared to baby dragon. So that's exciting.
Very cool. Count me in on that. I'm a huge fan. We started out, I think we brought back 88 3-gallons from that first trip in 2010 down to visit y'all. We were putting them in, actually on tarps in our hotel room. So I know we went to dinner, and I forgot to we're literally sitting at dinner, and I'm like, "Hey, did you put the do not disturb sign up?" He's like, I don't think I did.
Oh boy.
And we're just laughing our butts off thinking about this cleaning lady walking in, and there's 88 3-gallon Truncatum sitting in the
world is going on?
Right. I'm sure she's about to call the police, but it was.
I know that we had a Courtyard Marriott where we could bring in. We opened the door that went to the parking lot.
Yeah,
and we carried them all right in the door.
Oh, nice.
Planned well there.
It went really well, and it was definitely a fun trip.
Do you have a favorite of the Truncatums? I started out, Fire Dragon's one of the most classic. I think that's, a staple that, and it's so, you touched on it too. It's so useful because for especially a lot of your customers in Texas, this is going to provide them more shade for their Japanese maples. So they're providing a tough overstory plant that's going to go pretty quickly, and then provide some understory. I've got a few favorites. I know I started out with the red dragon, the golden dragon, but then once it got into super dragon and baby dragon, I really got blown away.
Yeah, and those two, the super dragon, it's such a unique color. The chartreuse mature foliage, but what really gets that one so much interest is that the spring color. The brand new leaves as they're emerging with that orangey red. The contrast between the older foliage and the new growth is so dramatic. People get so drawn to that out here. There are a couple of display plants in and around the main sales area, and the color, especially through the summertime, it stands out so dramatically. Super Dragon would definitely be high on my list. And the number of phone calls and emails I've received over the last 3 or 4 years about some of the earlier customers to have planted baby dragon in their landscape. It's so cool to hear these people talk about those trees and how excited they are at the performance. It's really neat. It grows. The baby dragon itself grows so quickly. It just seems unreasonable.
Right.
But the plant is awesome.
It just gives people something so much different too. I mean, I think especially baby dragon, it's such small foliage. It's going to be great for bonsai people. It's going to be great for so many reasons, but I mean, it's so unique in its format, its color. It's that's almost reddish spring color it gets. I know the first one I actually got was one that Keith had put into the Maple Society auction there. We were sitting around the, I didn't really know the TV show Dallas, but I guess we went to the ranch where that was filmed. And instead of taking the tour, I did the set up the auction. And so I had the catbird spot, and I had my eye on that baby dragon the entire time. So when that came up for auction, yeah, we were going in debt on that.
I think we went pretty hardcore at that, and I think it was one of the baby dragons early on that he released at a small stage.
I think it was one of the first times he had offered it to put it in the auction, and we were pretty excited to get it. I've still got it in the bank here, and it's phenomenal. It's very talked about here in the display garden.
That's really neat.
I just love the small foliage on it. I mean, that's just so unique. It's dense habit. I mean, it makes a good small truncatum for a lot of people's gardens. And
for sure. Yeah. And there's so many different approaches to growing that one too, as far as the shape of it. You know, if you leave it alone, it'll, a lot of people will refer to it as kind of a cousin it form.
Right. That's what mine's doing right now. It's
Yeah,
cool looking.
I've got plenty of them that look like that too. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of got a lot of flexibility with growing that one. Some people will prune up a little bit from the soil line to give it just kind of a miniature tree look, which is outstanding also. But and Keith, I remember experimented with doing some high grafts, like an existing seedling shantung maple, and
nice.
he would have me bring that into the greenhouse during the propagation season, and it's a tree probably 7 feet tall, and maybe 8 or 10 branches that he grafted baby dragon to, and that thing has got a really unique look. I don't know how feasible that would be for production, but it's just a neat tree, you know.
Very cool, man. And I'll reiterate, it's hard to beat Super Dragon. I know you mentioned that one, and we kind of moved on, but man, those colors. I know Brian Rule's probably the part of your reason you get so many phone calls. I think every second of every day in his Oklahoma garden, he was taking a picture of his Super Dragon and sharing that. It just, everybody's been foaming at the mouth for that one even more and more and more. He's
for sure. He and his wife, what awesome people. And I had Carl Munn had tipped me off that Brian was wanting to come down here, and it was really cool to have him down those several times he visited the nursery. You could tell that he was every bit into the maples as any of us. So yeah, that's awesome that he's hooked up with you guys out there. I think that's a great addition to your team.
Oh, thanks. We just fell in our lap, man. We couldn't have been any luckier with that. That was just a godsend for us. It was like, hey, are you interested in this? And we're like, yes, we're very interested in this.
And I think one of the things too, we mentioned and talked a little bit about Fire Dragon, but a lot of people don't realize that typically Acer truncatum is known for more of that yellow fall color, that yellow to slightly orange. And that Fire Dragon just gives you that red that everybody loves, but they really couldn't get in Texas, that red fall color out of a maple.
Yeah. And trying to, the assortment of plants that can be successfully grown in this climate that offer any kind of any kind of fall color at all are limited. So you add red to the fold with Fire Dragon, and people were super excited about it. And yeah, there's not really a better feeling than that fall show. You know that you've got the difficult summer growing season behind you, and you get to appreciate the fall colors of those trees. And yeah, the Fire Dragon, it puts on
you get some fire engine reds. I've been blown away with that one here too. It's great fall color. I mean, we might take fall color for granted here in Western North Carolina, but that one still puts on an amazing red display. And I'll tell you, I was blown away when I was in Dallas at the amount of Japanese maples, even palmatums growing there in Dallas, at the Botanical Gardens, at y'all's place. It was just, it opened my eyes up to so much more that could be. I was just shocked how well Japanese maples do in that area in general too, though. I mean, I know there's a lot of challenges, and maybe you can speak to some of those challenges to growing Japanese maples in Dallas, Fort Worth. But I was blown away at how well y'all are doing it.
Oh, it's really neat to see them, and especially like you're talking about some of the old trees that have been in that spot, for 2 or 3 decades. And you think back to some of the difficult weather years that have come through this area in that time, and the fact that it just really opens your eyes to how resilient and durable the maples are. But yeah, I remember one time it was Keith and I were driving to the airport for to get on a plane to go to a Maple Society meeting. And at one of the terminals at DFW, there are these big cutout brick planters. and there are half a dozen Siriu in there that are huge.
Wow.
And I mean, you got nothing to live with but exhaust, from vehicles, and they're thriving. So yeah, it seems like the main challenges for growing Japanese maples in this area would be lack of shade, and as far as the easiest thing to struggle with, it tends to be overwatering. And it's easy to understand because it feels so hot outside. People have the tendency to kind of want to overdo it a little bit, not realizing they are. But you get them in a spot that's at least protected from the late afternoon, say 2 p.m. on, and the vast majority of the cultivars that we work with are more than capable of growing well in spots like that. But yeah, it is neat to see, and I marvel all the time at new Japanese maples that I spot on a drive or a walk, whatever. It's neat to see big ones.
That's awesome. It's kind of awesome to see too that one of your biggest problems with Japanese maples is something that you have found solutions to by Acer Truncatum. I mean, putting the Acer Truncatum out there, in a few years you get some shade that then you can plant Japanese maples underneath. So,
and it's really neat to see customers that have stuck with it long enough to go through that process.
Yeah.
There's a real nice man named Milton who he's a usual suspect out here, and he showed me a picture. I guess it was last fall of a fire dragon he planted from a 7-gallon, and it's huge. And he's got Japanese maples all underneath it.
Nice.
It just makes you feel good that
that's awesome when it comes to fruition like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
So Scott, I know I would consider you a bonsai expert. I know you're really into bonsai and you have lots of really cool bonsais. So for an amateur like me, what are some of your favorite maples for bonsai?
Well, thank you for your kind words. It started with me as kind of necessity. I filled up my yard at home and I still wanted maples. So, the next step was growing them in pots. And from that point, I found my way into the world of bonsai, which is just, it's every bit as intricate and detailed as Japanese maples. So I've definitely found a lot of them that don't perform as well, but found plenty of them that do. And a lot of the most interesting cultivars for me, the rough bark varieties, are outstanding. You get them aged enough to actually show off the bark, and that in a small scale in a nice container is a great look. It's the way I think of selecting the best varieties for bonsai. I would try to find something that has a nice leaf shape or size, but also is capable of growing vigorously. So you can let it stretch its legs a little bit, to fatten up the trunk while you're kind of working it into a shape. And with bonsai, it's sort of broken up into a couple of phases. You've got the development phase where you're mainly focused on the trunk itself, the taper in the trunk, and allowing the diameter to gradually decrease in a way that doesn't look obvious.
Yeah.
And so it's funny when you see one of the biggest exhibitions in Japan is held every year in February. It's called the Kokufu 10, and the vast majority of the maples that you would see at that show are seedling palmatum with maybe some sort of characteristic, like a slightly shorter internode or a slightly smaller leaf. But when you do see cultivars, they would tend to be Shishigashira, especially over the last like 5 years. It seems like that one has been shown more in that big exhibition in Japan. And you look at some of these plants, and it's unbelievable what they've been able to achieve growing this tree. And for me, Shishigashira grows very slowly, but it's just unbelievable to see. So yeah, the first phase would be that vigorous growing, helping the trunk develop to the point that you're most interested in, and then from there it would be trying to balance the energy on all areas of the tree to mainly it's trying to keep the top from staying too vigorous. You're wanting to spread out that strength to other areas of the plant, and either through trimming or pinching, you can achieve that. And it's just it's a real neat way to grow trees. You know, it forces you to be kind of quiet and relax and just focus on something that's right in front of you. And I think that idea paired with the actual work on the tree is almost therapeutic. You know, it just helps you calm down. But my collection has certainly swollen to a point that most people would consider me nuts. And
I think it's the best kind of nuts. How old is your oldest tree? I knew at one point you had a really old Shishigashira.
I've got that'd probably be the oldest one. It's a plant that originally was imported through Russell's Bonsai in Olive Branch, Mississippi, and I bet it's got to be 60 years old or more. The bark is all that nice whitish gray color, and that has extended onto all the branches. The only area that really lacks the aged bark would be the very top of the tree, some of the younger growth. But it's a really neat thing to be a part of. And from the folks that I have shown the trees to, their reaction is always really positive. So
I can imagine. I need to get back down. Your collection's grown so much since I was there, man. How much time do you think that takes, like on a weekly basis, just to maintain this collection?
So there are seasonal specific tasks, like this time of year for sure would be. There would be a lot of labor involved, and when you get to a certain point where you're trying to refine the twigs or really improve the fine branching of the tree, what the process that you'll carry out in the early spring would be to pinch the center piece of growth out of each shoot that emerges to limit the length that internode stretches to. And so you're talking about every twig going in with these special tweezers that kind of have a blade built in on the bottom side.
Wow.
And you set them and you go through there and pinch that out. And what I found a little bit later into my bonsai career was there's a reason that people don't typically have a whole bunch of mature Japanese maples in their collection, because it's nearly a full-time job to pinch them when it's that time. So it's every afternoon, that would be probably an hour and a half for me. And a little bit later this spring, things are leafing out here presently, and so it's earlier than normal. But once it warms up and things are really growing, I'll take a look at stuff in the morning and take a look at stuff in the evening. And as tedious as it sounds, though, it really helps you get to know that tree. So other work that needs to be done, other procedures that you have to carry out on the tree, you have a lot better gauge of the strength of the plant, that sort of thing when you're in there real close, and I'll just kind of going over each twig in such detail. But the payoff for all of it is seeing the old maple bonsai in their dormant state. So they're trying to show off the twigs. That's always the goal with these trees, and it just there's a feeling that you get when you see one that's really well done that I don't really get with looking at other types of bonsai. But yeah, it's a passion of mine, every bit as strong as growing the maples for landscape use, and yeah, something that I really appreciate and have enjoyed a whole lot.
That's just awesome. I mean, to be able to get that appreciation in that work, I'm sure that's very just relaxing. Matt and I, we're brand new to bonsai. I mean, we've learned a little bit about bonsai through some bonsai classes, some different presentations we've went to, visiting and seeing different bonsai in different collections. But we're beginners when it comes to bonsai. I mean, you'll hear us say bonsai instead of bonsai because we know that's the way it's supposed to be said. But what tips would you have for beginners, for people who are just starting a bonsai? What tips would you give them in just the beginning stages of bonsai?
What I wish I could go back and tell myself is it's real easy, especially early on, to want to do more work than the tree is capable of handling, in a particular season. So what helped me is honestly to have a slightly larger group of trees that I would work on. And by doing that, you're not just kind of focusing on one or two. You've got a group of things, so you can get more interesting work done without focusing all the work unnecessarily on a smaller number of plants. But I guess the timing would be really important too. In Texas, it's really avoiding any work to the trees when the temperatures are warm. So really from late May through September, it's mainly watering, maintaining, just trying to keep them healthy and pest free, that sort of thing. And being willing to be patient with them is always critical, but a whole lot easier said than done. It's there are a handful of books also. I think Peter Adams is the author of a British man who is passed. He was one of the real early experts in that part of the world, and I think his book is just titled Maples for Bonsai, but he goes over in such great detail different ways to start trees to work to a certain result. He's got a lot of illustrations that are outstanding, and that was really useful for me. But I think probably the biggest thing is just being willing to fail. Going through some trial and error when you're working on them. And another thing I learned from Keith is when you do approach stuff with that trial and error mentality, recording all of your results. Keith would have these little notebooks that he would write things down daily, and then he could revisit that later and kind of remember, what the result was of performing a certain task on a tree. Right. So there's a lot to it, and I think I'm overcomplicating the question for sure.
No.
I think that's perfect.
I think it's important to realize that sometimes you fail, especially with bonsai, because I mean, you're taking a plant and putting it into a pot where you may forget to water it. It may die eventually, or you may do something that you're not supposed to do during the wrong time of the season. And whenever you're doing those things in the wrong time of the season, you can cause damage to your tree or kill it.
I think that's excellent advice for people. I really like the part about taking notes. You know, the first time I did meet Keith, he did tell me he was a certified genius. But there's some really wise wisdom in what he says. He's so funny about it. You know, you laugh, but then you realize what a cool mentor you had, because he's a really wise guy.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, it'd be easy to get the wrong impression of Keith,
right.
But you're absolutely right. One of the sharper people that I've met. And, the neat thing about Keith is he's still, interested in having fun,
right?
You know, so,
Keith I could say the same joke, and I like to joke a lot, but Keith can say the same joke as I said and get by with it. If I said the same thing Keith said, I would be in so much trouble. He just has that charm about him that he just can't get mad at Keith. Everybody loves him. He's a trip.
Oh yeah.
I've got to hear about what he's done since he's been in Italy. I'm sure he's got himself into some adventures over there. But he's a trip. I always took him in the best possible way. Now, Hubble Supercork. You've talked a lot about trees that are vigorous, that have that interest. I know that one has your namesake, and it kind of fits a lot of those categories you were just talking about.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. That's a real neat plant. The coarse bark, as y'all have seen, it develops much faster than some of the other available rough bark cultivars.
Oh yeah, I've had it really barking up nice in a 3. I mean, really nice.
Yeah, and it still displays the same vigor of something like Arakawa. So it's been a really neat one to work with. And thanks to you guys, there's been a lot more interest in that cultivar for customers out here, and I certainly appreciate that. But that one started. It's a big Arakawa that is planted at my house that originally was grown by Carl Munn, and that tree would produce a generous amount of seed each year. And a lot of them would germinate just around the plant in the garden. And I was walking up to the front door one day, and I looked over and thought, well, that's weird, because this seedling was maybe finishing its second, maybe third year in the ground. Yeah. And it was just completely covered with that rough bark. So took a few scions off of that, started grafting it to build some inventory, and it's been a fun one to grow. The leaf seems just a little bit smaller than some of the other rough bark varieties, but kind of keeping on the same footing as the other rough bark varieties. It roots very readily from a cutting, and air layers like a dream. It's just it's a cool plant. And I think that's one that is certainly capable of producing a real interesting bonsai.
I know collectors everywhere are thankful for that. We've had great success with it. It's been an awesome introduction. We've primarily been grafting it here, but I always let people know they can air layer it, or eventually they can take cuttings from that and start to produce even more from one in the ground. Because it's an awesome tree for bonsai.
Do you have any other cultivars or seedlings you're looking at, or have you named recently?
I've got a batch of 6. They actually started as seed collected off of Makawa Yatsubusa, and they're all a dramatically cascading growers, which is very unusual. It seems from seed that originated with Makawa, and I've been propagating off of those original plants over the last 2 or 3 years, and there's one of them in particular that has a little bit more detailed leaf, more of a deeper division between the lobes and a really attractive serrated edge to the leaf lobe. And so I've got a positive feeling about that. As interested as folks are in, I'll say Ryusin and some of the other notable cultivars of that type, it seems like something that folks would be happy to have in the future. And,
oh man, that's
so
exciting. Is that one still
Yeah.
is it keeping some of that tightness from Makawa as well?
I don't have any of that. The growth, it definitely seems more standard seedling Acer palmatum like. The internode spacing is pretty consistent with a standard seedling, but the one that has the slightly smaller leaf with the little bit of detail, it does have more of a compact design, and
Very
it's
cool.
neat to see the natural form of those original trees without any pruning, staking, or any of that being done to them. Their form is really, really cool. So
that sounds super interesting to me. Not only for the plant itself, because it sounds like a cool plant, but my mind just goes to the F2, the generation after that, and what you'd find from the genetics that has, because it has some sort of weeping habit, but it also has Makawa in its.
I know.
Are you still going
Gene
through
pool.
many Acer Truncatum selections? Are you still making any picks on those?
I've had a couple of bad seed years out
We
here.
did here too. Yeah, it was really bad the last 2 years here also.
Yeah, and I've got a batch that I've collected and is chilling right now. So I'm hopeful this spring that we'll get a lot more to germinate. But over the last 2 or 3, I've had poor results. But I do feel like that will certainly improve. I remember sort of ebbs and flows like this in the past,
Right.
as far as the seed production out here, where some years you would get just a bunch of floaters, and
Right.
and then the following year or 2 years later, you get some really good production out of the big trees. So it's definitely something that we're still doing. Just waiting on the trees to cooperate.
Yeah, same here. I'm optimistic we'll have a good seed year here too. In North Carolina, we had very similar. Like I'd say the last 3 years have been ho hum for seed production. One year we had really late frost and it killed a lot of the the organs as they're starting to cross pollinate. So there wasn't as much going on there for cross pollination. And then like 4 years ago we had we really don't get much hurricane stuff because we're from the coast, but we had hurricane like winds come in and blow all the seed off before they're ready. So it's like I'm just ready for a good seed year,
Yeah, no, for sure. That's mean spirited right there by Mother Nature to go blowing all the seeds away.
So what are some of your favorite Japanese maples for Texas?
Boy, yeah,
Loaded
there
question.
are so many good ones. I love Makawa. The form of that is just so unique. Out of leaf, that one is equally as impressive as to the look of the tree during the growing season.
Yeah.
So Makawa would have to be there. Orangeola is a variety that it seems to get overlooked.
It's underrated
to some degree, but is an awesome plant for us. It is, I'd say, very close to the same vigor of emerald lace, which y'all know how wild that one goes, just insane. And Orangeola can produce results similar to that in the hot climate. So that one is really cool. I love the Deshojo, the contrast between that beautiful red spring flush and the slightly older mature foliage is timeless to me. And I remember one time Keith had me go with him to his church where he had planted I think a Shinda Shoujo many years before, and just marveling at the size of this tree. And it was in a spot that got some really brutal afternoon sun,
Mhm.
but it was impressive to see that. I'll say 15 or so years after it had been planted.
Wow.
Those three, that'd be a dwarf, a good lace leaf, and a good mid-size upright. But I really think, guys, I could make a case for all of them.
Yeah.
If I'm
What-
perfectly honest.
What,
Yeah,
what would
yeah.
be your best red upright for Texas?
As far as color is concerned, Fire Glow seems to be the most capable of maintaining the best color through the summertime, and it would be capable of doing that even in a low light setting, which
Yeah.
is where most of our customers are going to be planting one. So that one is outstanding. The Trompenberg is surprisingly capable in much more sun than the average upright red could handle. So that one has long been a favorite of mine too.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I think the same thing. It's just interesting to hear, from the horse's mouth in Texas there. You're in the thick of it, so it's always good to hear those things.
Now that one, Keith planted a big Trompenberg at his house. And I remember going over there early on and seeing that tree, just a monster, such a beautiful tree. And right out in it, it got some overhead midday sun, and all it did was make the summertime color better on that one for sure.
So I'll ask you another question here. What would you say some of your top advice would be to people growing Japanese maples in high heat zones?
Just one of the things that helped me early on. I don't know that y'all ever met Roy. Roy Gallegos was a fellow that he and his wife lived in Mansfield, and for many years early on in Metro Maple's history, Roy would come out on Saturday and help us sell the trees. And Roy, he drove for UPS, and so it was kind of a ritual with him. He was always trying to kind of push the limit on these trees, get them to perform in slightly more difficult conditions than Keith would tell him.
Yeah.
But just what Roy would tell me is, the Hubble, you just got to walk the yard. Just be willing to look at them. And it's once you kind of get used to their look during the growing season, it makes it really easy to spot when there's something different or unusual that's given them problems. And I would say trying to avoid the kind of loving them to death with too much water. I remember Keith using that expression early on and meaning it in the best way, but
Right.
That's sort of what can happen. So those things would be real helpful, and we try to give folks the most helpful advice out here that we can, and it's really neat because there are always customers that do squeeze it a little bit, and
Right.
the results are in most cases good. So yeah, just keeping an eye on things, and a couple of times a week during the summer, just sort of walking the landscape and getting to know the trees, getting to know their reactions to certain things is just unbelievably helpful.
I think that's great advice for people. Those are things people really need to know, and I think it's super helpful and applicable is the main thing. I think people learn from stuff like that, and being observative like that's one of the best advices you can give people anywhere. I mean, I think you really don't get to appreciate these plants to their fullest extent unless you are walking the yard, unless you are observing these things, and each week kind of spending some time with them. Sometimes people show me a tree and it's so far gone, and it's like, gosh, we should have checked this out a long time ago. How do we get here? You got to look at it a little bit more than that.
Sure. No, I know. And it helps head off big problems, without any ultimate extreme risk. If you just, walk the yard, look at them, and like you said, it benefits us too because it gives you an extra opportunity to enjoy the beautiful colors and form of these awesome plants.
We have such a respect for what you do. Like I said earlier, it's a mutual admiration society here. We're big fans of Scott, and we're big fans of Metro Maples, and I'm really glad the legacy of Keith's that you're continuing on there with Metro Maples. Scott, what's a great way for our listeners to find you?
Oh, you can find us at online at MrMaples.com, and our website there has all the best ways to contact us via over the phone or email. And anybody that's listening and in the area, we'd be happy to have you out and talk maples or show you some neat stuff that would work in your application.
Yeah, it's definitely worth a trip out to visit. I know I need to get back down there and visit you. I heard you say 35 truncatums, so I've got at least 9 to 10 more I need right there. If I can do the math at the top of my head, we're gonna be visiting you pretty soon. So
yeah, I think I see a Dallas Fort Worth trip in our future.
Right.
I mean, between that and your new weeping seedlings and all these other things, we're gonna have to at some point get our hands on.
What we need to do is take the crew and go down and shoot. Like we've had him briefly describe, but I don't think our listeners get any idea how good this bonsai collection is. We've got to come visit the Scott Hubble private bonsai collection because that's where it's at. I knew how good you showed me some pictures of how good it was 10 years ago. I can't imagine what you're dealing with now. Because I was blown away what you were showing me at the Maple Society meetings. I mean, like in Seattle, that's been a minute too.
That was cool, and that talk was so much fun because everybody at that meeting and looking at everybody's face when I was giving that presentation, people were really interested, and that feels great to get people excited and interested in the maples and maples for bonsai.
Scott, just keep doing what you're doing. I know everybody's going to be interested, man. I love it, and I hope our listeners enjoyed this. Getting together with you and just doing a little fellowship. And man, we've been friends for a minute, and it's just good to get you on here on the show. Like I tell people all the time, if you're in that area, definitely go check out my friend Scott. He's got the goods down there. He's got really cool stuff going on in Texas.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all's friendship for sure, and it blows me away that it's been as long as it has since we did meet up.
I know it's been too long. We'll have to fix that.
Thanks so much for coming on, Scott. I mean, it's always an honor and privilege to get to talk with you about all these cool plants. And as always, we'll have to keep trading maples back and forth.
Oh, you betcha. I'm thrilled to have been on, and thank you guys for hosting me for sure.
Sounds good, man. We'll talk soon. Take care.
All righty. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Wow, guys. Great interview. Again, some of my favorite people. One of my favorite people in Maples, Scott Hubble, just a good buddy of ours and somebody we wanted to get on the podcast. And that's really the reason we do this podcast. One, to catch up with our friends like Scott, and two, just to bring you interesting people. I mean, we love having these conversations with some of our favorite maple growers and entrepreneurs and hobbyists from all around the world. And Scott's one of those people. It just gives us a good excuse to give him a shout on the phone, say, hey, Scott, what you doing right now? You want to be on the podcast? So we hope you enjoy being in on those conversations.
From bonsai. I mean, he talked about some great tips for bonsai, talked about what he loves about it, to the truncatums, to his introductions of Japanese maples. I mean, I think we've covered a lot on today's interview, and Scott is just always one of those guys that I love calling up, talking, and seeing what he's into, because we like to get into that as well.
Guys, if you like a Japanese maple talk show like the Mr. Maple Show, make sure to give us a 5-star rating on any of your major podcast platforms. We actually have more podcast listeners now than YouTube listeners. I'm impressed and excited about how quickly it's growing. But we do air the video components to these every single Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Mr. Maple Show on YouTube. So you can always check out the video component there. That live chat is a lot of fun. We have people involved in that live chat who are really engaged and love talking about plants. So if you want to be part of that community, it's a great way to get involved. Definitely check out our Mr. Maple Friends group too. It's another great way. It's on Facebook, Mr. Maple Friends. It's a great way to get involved a little bit more in our Mr. Maple community and share photos of your garden. And just a really fun thing, especially going into spring. I know a lot of you listeners may not know about that one, but it's a great way to get involved in our community as well.
I've seen a lot of people posting just spring leaf out right now. I mean, spring leaf out. When this video is airing, it'd be a lot of summer garden photos or spring garden photos. I mean, that is just so fun to see these plants growing in different areas, especially trees they've got from Mr. Maple. I mean, that just gets me excited to see these plants doing well in other people's garden, because that's what we love doing. We love sharing our passion about Japanese maples with other people. And when we see people growing our Japanese maples, it just puts a smile on our face. So go to the Mr. Maple Friends group on Facebook, upload some of your photos of your Japanese maples. It's always a great time.
Hey guys, don't forget we add 10 new trees every single Tuesday at 10 as well. So there's always something new and exciting coming to MrMaple.com. This spring we'll be adding some of our most highly sought after selections we've ever listed. And those are always at 10 a.m. Eastern. Oftentimes we're adding up to 20 plants at 10 a.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. You can sign up for those emails on our website. It's definitely a fun thing to get involved with there if you like new and exciting plants.
And guys, like Matt mentioned earlier with our daily YouTube content, we work really hard on trying to put out daily content on our YouTube channel. You know, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to it. We've got top fives, we've got garden walkthroughs, we've got nursery walkthroughs, we've got question videos. I mean, we've got a whole gardening content daily on the Mr. Maple Show, most of it about Japanese maples. Go make sure you're subscribed. You're going to have a really good time following us on YouTube.
Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.